we are being bullies right now. This is absolutely fantastic. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody, to another build video. We got a really good one for you here. We are going to be rocking a Dexterity Intelligence build with the Moonveil and the Keen Nagakiba at plus 25 with a Chilling Mist Ash of War on it. This is going to be a really fun build to play, and the only summon that you are going to need for this build, if you want to maximize everything out, is the Mimic tier, because it's going to have all the frost and the spell damage and the frost damage that you have, and it's going to be absolutely broken, and I cannot wait to share this with you guys. So we're going to start out this time around with the talismans. First and foremost is going to be the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman. Now, this is going to normally boost your physical damage negation, and the reason that you need this is because you are not going to be very tanky. You are going to really emphasize spell casting and hitting very quickly in and out with your katanas, but there is a chance, because you're going to be in the fray, that you're going to get hit really hard. And I'm in New Game Plus 5, and people are hitting super hard at the end of this playthrough. So that is why we chose that one. It's always nice to have that extra damage negation on you. The second talisman we're rocking is the Shard of Alexander. This is going to greatly boost the attack power of your skills. Every single skill, from spells all the way to your Ashes of War, to the Moonveil Transient Moonlight, it is going to make you just do more damage, and we all know what more damage means. It means happiness in Elden Ring. Moving on to our number 3 talisman, we are using the Graven Mass Talisman. This is going to greatly raise the potency of your sorceries, so it's going to make your sorceries hit like a truck. And considering we are using a lot of frost sorceries with this build, this only made sense to put this right here, and I'm super pleased with how much damage it actually allows you to do with your sorceries. And then finally, in the number 4 slot, we have Radagon's Icon. This is going to shorten your spellcasting time, and I really chose this because some of the frost sorceries, they have a little bit of charge time to them. They take a little bit longer to cast than I typically would like them to, but I was really keen on using frost for this build because I love the idea of being a frost ninja or a frost mage or anything along those lines that has to do with frost damage. It's always been a damage type that has really interested me in this game. So all of the frost sorceries that we're going to be using are going to be sped up with your cast time, and that is going to help you out a lot, especially if you're in the fray close to the bosses. Moving on up to our weapons, we are going to have 4 total weapons with this build. The first and foremost needs no introduction. We're going to be rocking the Moonveil Katana at plus 10. This is a no-brainer. With intellect scaling of B and dexterity scaling of B, this matches perfect with that int dex build that we're going for. And as a side note, it also has blood loss buildup. So as you're doing frost damage, as you're getting the frostbite effects to go off, blood loss effects are also going to go off, and it's just going to stack over and over, and it's going to make you do a lot of damage, which you want to do especially against these end game bosses in the game. Once again, Transient Moonlight, the Ash of War on this weapon, is, in my opinion, probably one of the most broken Ashes of War in this entire game. It has a fantastic horizontal sweep when you do the Transient Moonlight with a light attack, and then it has a vertical slash down when you have the Transient Moonlight with a heavy attack. Both of which do great damage, both of which have fantastic magic damage that go along with them. Speaking of damage, this weapon is going to have a physical attack of 179 plus 158, and the magic damage that is stacked on top of that is 213 plus 218. Solid weapon choice. The second katana we are going to be switching back and forth between is the Nagakiba at plus 25. I had never used this weapon before. I actually am very impressed. I love the fact that I put Chilling Mist on it, and it really helps get that frost damage off. And once again, you have the frost damage, and this weapon is going to cause blood loss damage, so it's just going to really pair well over time as you're attacking the enemy. With the physical damage of 242 plus 358, this weapon is great, hits like a train, and it's very quick. The Ash of War Chilling Mist provides a huge mist all around you that slowly does ticking damage to the enemies around you, and it gives your weapon frost damage. So that's really going to help you out, especially with the aesthetic of everything frost, between our spells, our Ashes of War, how we look. It's just going to go really well with this. I like this katana a lot. It has a dex scaling of A, no intellect scaling, but if we really want to put some magic damage out there, we'll switch back to the Moonveil Katana. This is just great because of the range on it, and the sweeping attack really gets those enemies down really quickly. The next 2 weapons we're going to have equipped here is the Carrion Glintstone Staff at plus 25. Now, this has a sorcery scaling of 329 and an intellect scaling of S. So that's the main reason that I'm using this weapon, is because both of those scalings are really good, and it boosts Carrion Sword sorceries, which means our Carrion Slicer and our Duelist Moonblade are both going to be buffed with this effect. It's really handy, really convenient, and it makes the most sense in this particular build to boost those sorceries when we're using this staff. The second staff we're going to have equipped is the Carrion Regal Scepter at +9, which is going to boost Full Moon Sorcery. Now, I have a few sorceries on this build. One is Renala's Full Moon, and the other is Stars of Ruin. Both of those, I do believe, get buffed by this sorcery staff, so that is why we chose that, and it has an intellect scaling of S with a sorcery scaling of 355. I would have this at +10, but sadly, I ran out of stones, so we're rocking it at +9. Moving on down to the armor. Now, the armor, for once, is not just for aesthetics. The armor is actually serving a purpose. So, first and foremost, we have the Snow Witch hat, which gives you a 10% damage buff when using frost sorceries. So that's why we have that on. Blythe's armor is really the only other armor that I found to match the big floppiness of the hat. So in that regard, it's aesthetic. And then for the last two pieces of gear we're using the Fire Prelate Gauntlets and the Fire Prelate Greaves. This is solely just to give you poise, because we are going to be a little bit squishier with this build, and having a little bit extra poise on you is going to allow you to not be interrupted as much during casting and take a little bit more damage when you are in the fray and you're not hiding behind your Mimic tier while they're doing most of the work. So, finally, moving on to our Flask of Wondrous Physic, you're going to be using the Cerulean Hidden tier, which is going to eliminate all FP consumption. So the second you start drinking it, you have a time period of, I believe, 30 seconds where you don't use any FP, and you can cast and cast and cast. And then the Magic Shroud and Crack tier, which is going to temporarily boost your magic attacks. Like I said, everything in this build we want to boost as much as possible, so having those two there is going to help you A, boost damage, and B, save FP so you're not constantly drinking your Estus at all times. So taking a look here at the spells we're going to be using a Duelist Moonblade, which gives a fantastic horizontal slash outward and can hit multiple enemies at a time, so this is really, really helpful in those AoE situations. It also does a really good amount of damage to bosses. The next up is that super fast Carrion Slicer. This is going to allow us to get in and out with our katanas and use the Carrion Slicer to just do a ton of damage. The Carrion Slicer, in my opinion, is one of the better sorceries, and because we have the staff that boosts Carrion Sword sorceries, then this is also boosted. Next up, we are going to be using the Glintstone Ice Crag. I love this spell. It hits super, super hard, and it doesn't have very long cast time. It's just your run-of-the-mill casting spell to do a little bit of damage, move on, grab your katana, and go in for it. The next sorcery we're going to be using is Zamor Ice Storm. Now, this takes a little bit to get off, but if you can get a fully charged Ice Storm off with a bunch of enemies around you or with a boss around you, they're going to take a ton of damage. Really, really helpful spell, especially if you don't have the aggro. You plant this around you, and then you move on to the next spell, and you put the Freezing Mist out, hit him with a few Duelist Moonblades, and it just completely wrecks. So, speaking of Freezing Mist, that's the next spell we're going to be using. This is just going to release Cold Mist before you, helping you get that tick down damage, build up that Frostbite. Then, we're using Renala's Full Moon, like I said before, launches a giant moon that does an area of effect damage with enemies. And finally, I think one of my favorite spells that we're using for this build is the Stars Ruin, which is going to fire 12 Dark Shooting Stars that pursue foes. So not only does this track, but it does an immense amount of damage if every single one of them hit. This works very, very well against adds and bosses. Highly recommend this for sure. You can switch two other spells in here if you wanted to, but I found that they were not necessary, especially considering we're going for a pretty much all frost sorcery build here. And guys, the last thing I want to talk to you guys about in this particular build is the summon you'll be using, and that summon is going to be the Mimic tier. No surprise there. You can do all of your frost spells and your frost attributes onto the Mimic, and he's just going to wreck. As you saw at the very beginning of the video, he absolutely annihilates, especially when you have the blood loss and the frost buildup going at the same time. With the katanas, it is unreal. He does great support for you when you are in the fray and he's back casting, and vice versa when you're casting and he's up in the fray. Definitely highly recommend using the Mimic tier with this build. It is almost a must, and it's super, super fun. So guys, that's going to be all for this particular build. If there's anything that I left out you guys think I should add in, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to start a conversation about it. Also, liking the video and subscribing to the channel would help me out a ton. I appreciate the heck out of all of you guys. And until next time, stay safe, enjoy the game, and I'll see you in the next one.